and then Anasaia's character like starts to vaporize into this black, evil-looking witch smoke demon lady with, black eyed.
What would you do?
And of course, Soul thinks that she's attacking him, and so he's like,
stabbing that thing, bro. What do you mean? I think, dude, like what Soul did was perfectly justifiable. Because if I see some crap like that, dude, I'm gonna be asking questions later. Like,
and then she's like,
well, we made it, gentlemen. That'll be my my way of introducing this video. We survived what was the Acolyte season 1. Oh, if there even is more than one season. But well, I guess we'll get into more on why I feel that way about it. I don't know that it really needs explaining. It's more self-explanatory. But we're going to do what we always do, which is give our honest opinion, whether that's good, bad, or somewhere in between. So we're not trying to just be the bash everything, praise everything channel. We're just here to give our honest thoughts. So I'm curious to see what y'all guys think, because we've talked a little here and there, but we haven't really talked in detail. So, but let's kind of just go around real quick and give our initial impressions on the season as a whole, because we obviously didn't get to do our episode by episode reviews. We had, life events and stuff came up, but now that we're doing the full season here, as opposed to just break down episode by episode, let's just give our kind of our initial thoughts before we jump into the each episode.
Well, I guess I can go first. Just like a quick and dirty. It was to me. Well, it was just a jumbled mess. To me, it's a show that really needed like 3 or 4 more drafts before it went to production.
That's being nice too.
And the cameos, love them. They can't save it.
Maybe the proper explanation was like, see draft, throw draft out, say get out of my office and come up with something better.
And that's what they came up with,
right? That's what a draft is. So I'm saying they need about 3, 4 more.
It makes me wonder, like,
I guess
how many times
a bright part of it, I guess. The premise I'm okay with, the execution, and again, just like it needed more of a draft to it. Like it needed another draft. Like it didn't seem done. It was kind of, it was rough.
The writing was very sloppy.
Yeah, sloppy. Just that's the quick answer. So it won't take too much time, but
I agree with Drew. The writing was not so great. The action, I think, was probably the best thing. I think the action scene when we finally see the stranger, I can't remember what his actual name is. I didn't really pay attention, to be honest. But I think that
depends on which version of him you go by. If you go by, is it Quimir, or whatever the average Joe character part of him was, and then the Sith, he's just like Sith guy. So
yeah, but I mean, like that first encounter with him though, I thought was phenomenal. I thought that was pretty good. The whole action sequence was really pretty well put together. But other than that, like that was really the only shining thing about the show, I think. Besides maybe Saul. I liked Soul. I think I like the actor, to be honest, though. I think that's the reason why I liked him.
And I agree with you. And I like the stranger actor. I mean, I think he's a good actor. I
think the internet's dubbed him Smilo Ren, so we'll just go with that.
Did they really? That's a great... that helmet, though, the helmet was, creepy, and, like, it just, I don't know. Like, I wish, like, Siths would, like, in the movies at least, like, I wish they would have done that more often. Like, maybe have, like, more of, like, a cooler helmet like that, like, more of, like, a creepier, like, helmet, I guess. Like, Kylo Ren's was kind of, like, whatever. But, like, this was, like, almost, like, gave off, like a horror aspect to it. And that I really liked about it. So.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on something that Drew said. In when he was talking about the draft and everything and how he felt like it needed several more. The first thing that comes to my mind is, because, a lot of people want to put blame on, I guess, the easiest targets here, which would be the writers, the showrunner. But at the end of the day, Lucasfilm has to sign off and say, yeah, this is good, put this out into production. And so this to me is just more of evidence of where Lucasfilm's at, in the sense of, we got the bad writing in Book of Boba Fett, we got the bad writing in Kenobi, we got questionable writing in Ahsoka, and it's just like, at this point you almost expect that. And so I can't say I'm surprised, but at the same time, we haven't had one to this level of bad in terms of just the incoherency of the writing. Out of any of the others, I think the other one that would probably be the next worst would have been probably the Kenobi show, in terms of just it making sense, because it was very all over the place, and a lot of very dumb and questionable writing choices in that as well. So and like with Book of Boba Fett, it was mainly just boring. It wasn't that the story was just poorly written. It was just like, you just need to make it what we expected it to be, which is like he's a bounty hunter. He's
one of the coolest bounty hunters too
and,
that we've known. Like one of the most badass ones too. Like, it just was not good.
But that's kind of, I'm one of those things that, like, this show should have never been greenlit in its current form, and in the fact that it did is just further example of why Lucasfilm's where they're at right now.
Well, and again, I'm okay with the premise. Like, people were really worried about, when it first came out, of like, they're going to go off the deep end. They're going to make, I think it doesn't stray. I don't want to say it's like a total separate thing from Star Wars. Like, in some ways, the premise stays with what Star Wars is for the most part, but the execution, again, is just wasn't good.
There. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, like the idea behind it, I think, was a great idea. Like, have a whole like murder mystery type like vibe to it at the beginning, trying to find out who the killer is and stuff. Then like have it be her twin, which is honestly not a terrible idea. I think that was like wasn't too bad, but just how they like delivered it and executed it was not great. And they just like kind of ruined like different things that happened in the past, I guess you could say, for like past movies, like the prequels. They kind of ruined some things in that aspect, and even the original trilogy. So
yeah,
I think
some of the lore aspects is what they
ruined.
And some of that, and I will give it this. I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, because I know we're just gonna, from talking to Johnny, we're gonna bash it most of the night. But
yeah,
I'll give it this: some of the lore aspects were from Legends, and we just kind of assumed they were the same. Mm-hmm. So some of that stuff, I'm not like torn up that they kind of messed up, but some of the stuff, just for example, the Force sensitive baby thing, like the twins, she makes the twins. I don't know. They don't do a great job of explaining how she makes them per se, but
I don't think they really go into like large detail about that at all, actually. Like, I don't really remember,
that's what the whole Mandalorian show was, and is the overall, I want to call it the overarching arc. The Mandalorian, the prequel, or the 7, 8, and 9 have that kind of in it. Yeah. But that's what we're going over already. And like, you mean to tell me, whatever, 100 years before the Phantom Menace, that some witch on some random planet figured it out?
Well, and that's what they insinuate in the final episode, is that like somehow Plagueis learns from them how to create life, and that's where Anakin comes from. And it's like, which we are going to get into that more in detail, because there's a lot of possible theories behind that. But
that's fine. But like, why are we talking about it? However many years later that you can't do it. It's like it's already happened twice, sort of thing.
It also kind of like ruins like the whole like Anakin being the chosen one aspect as well, in a way, with the fact
that it makes him less special for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of just like, I don't know, that hurts a little bit, because I'm just like, dang, bro. Like I grew up at least like with Anakin Skywalker from the prequels. That was like what I watched first when I was a kid. So like seeing him as chosen one was dope. And then like this kind of, again, I mean, I wouldn't say it like ruined it, but it just made him, like you said, less special. And like, I don't know, I think that kind of ruins his character in a way. Not ruins it, but doesn't make it as special, I guess, of a character with his downfall. So,
which I guess I got the feeling in the finale that he was trying to tell him they're the same person, but she had to put you into two bodies. So I get that they're trying to delineate, like Anakin was the perfect, like, I don't know what you want to call it.
perfect example of that, I guess.
Perfect example of the Force convergence, whatever, making a human, or a human, because they kind of, I don't want to say they failed. They didn't do exactly, they had to make two. They couldn't just make one.
Yeah.
So I get what I guess that's what they were trying to do with what they were doing in the finale, but
I think it highlights a bigger issue of the show as a whole, and this is y'all keep using the word assume to try to explain what's happening. And I think the problem with this show is it presents a lot of different questions, but gives either no answers or very vague answers, or just kind of doesn't answer it at all. And it's in a sense of like, hey, we're gonna present, we're gonna show Plagueis in this random scene for 5 seconds and not give any explanation as to why. Half the people watching the show probably don't even know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's things like, it's moments like that they'll add in with no context and no explanation, and then just kind of let us try to figure out what's going on. And I think that's another reason why. And I'm not saying you have to explain every little thing, but I'm saying if you don't explain enough, we're gonna end up with more, not even questions, but just like, okay, how did half the stuff in this story even? What is it even supposed to mean? Because most episodes, I'm trying to figure out why this character did this, or why this happened, or why this, and it's not that it's because it's just so complex. It's because it's so vague. They just present things and don't flesh it out. And so it's like
that is the main driver, I want to say, for the thought behind the jumble. Like, it feels jumbled. Like, it's not a clear, there's never a clear answer to really anything.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
And I guess we can kind of get into it more as, this is going to be our, like we said before at the beginning, sort of try to go episode by episode here to a certain degree. We'll obviously, what we'll do is we'll pair the first two episodes together because they kind of went together anyway. And then we'll probably end up to some degree pairing episodes 3 and 7 together because they were kind of the same episode, just sort of with new information. And so
the episode where they introduce Ki-Adi-Mundi, was that episode 3 or 4? I can't remember. Because I think, like, for me at least, when they introduced him and like the whole, like, we can cut this out by the way, but him not like realizing that there's a Sith, I guess, like, in what is it, the prequels? Didn't he say it was like 1,000 years? I thought that there hasn't been a Sith, and obviously they like fixed that in episode 8, kind of where she like tells the whole lie, but like, yeah, but I just figured we could probably maybe pair those together as well, because like I know a lot of people were up in arms about Ki-Adi-Mundi being in there and not realizing that there's been a Sith, in the last like 1,000 years, when it literally clearly was a Sith that we were seeing, but then they obviously kind of.
Yeah, we'll tackle a lot of that, but I think you're right. We'll kind of pair episodes 4, 5, and probably 6 to some degree together. But yeah, I think the best thing to do is, start from the beginning, obviously. And so we, there'd been kind of rumors swirling about this show for a while. Some of the cast interviews, showrunner interviews had, there's a lot of political undertones to those interviews and a lot of apprehension from people, and then a lot of things people are hearing behind the scenes on how the show itself is actually going to be. I think the expectation was pretty low coming into it, but I think there was some curiosity as to, because of the timeline that's taking place and this idea of like a murder mystery everything is intriguing, and to at least give some credit to Leslie Headland. I have not watched Russian Doll, but I have heard mostly positive things about that show. That I'm not 100% sure if she was the showrunner or if she just wrote or directed, but that was kind of her, I guess, claim to fame coming into this project, and a well-received show. So coming in, it wasn't like they were doing a Rings of Power situation where they brought these two guys in that had basically done nothing and then they fell flat on their face. It's one of those things where she actually had some bit of street cred, if you want to call it that, because she had a successful project previously that had been almost universally well received. So I think there's a lot of curiosity. So we get into that first episode, and when I look back on it, I would say it's probably the most coherent episode of the show, and then from there it just kind of goes downhill in terms of how easy it is to understand what's going on, because really you're just getting introduced to the characters, what's happening, and we obviously start off with a fight between a Jedi and this assassin of some kind, which we're not sure who it is at the time, but obviously the assassin's able to overcome and kill the Jedi, and there's this sort of mystery around what's her motivation, why is this happening. This is supposed to be a time of peace, unprecedented peace in the galaxy, and the Sith aren't supposed to be around at all. So it's just kind of interesting that, let alone a Jedi that would die, but let alone someone be able to kill one, because apparently that was pretty unheard of. So, and even you think of that, the comment that Anakin makes in The Phantom Menace, where he tells Qui-Gon, nobody can kill a Jedi. And that's kind of the perception you get here, is like, this was a time where the Jedi, in some sort senses, I guess, were pictured as is invincible. And so, I'd just be curious to hear y'all's thoughts on the first two episodes, because I personally thought that the first episode does a decent job of setting up what's going to happen, sort of getting that mystery going. I'm not going to pretend all the acting and writing and everything is just perfect, but I'm saying in terms of setting up, giving you an idea of how the show's going to go from there, I would say the first episode does its job for the most part of putting us on the right path as to what's going on. And then from there, obviously, you get episode 2. But
yeah, the first episode did a really good job of giving us hope that maybe we're possibly going to have a good show to watch. And then you get into episode 2.
Can't do that while I'm drinking a good glass of water.
Then we get into episode 2, it kind of just plummets from there. But no, they did a good job though, like getting you like intrigued, because like first episode I was pretty intrigued. I was like, all right, this looks like you could have some promise to it. I like the murder mystery like storyline kind of they're going for. I like the fact that like we saw like a Jedi die from just a person using actual like weapons, not like lightsaber, nothing like that. Thought that was okay, kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see that happen. But other than that, I mean, everything. The first episode was decent, but wasn't anything crazy. But again, it gave me a little bit of hope. I was gonna be like, all right, well, this looks like a decent show. I feel like it could has some promise, and then they just do really bad executing the next few parts. I mean, the story was kind of all over the place in episode 2. I felt like a little bit, and it just kind of disappeared off the path.
I disliked that. What's her name? Dadgummit. Indara. Master Indara was the first one she killed. So I was looking. I know we got flashbacks. But what a way to start a show,
I will add to that though. Like, I feel like seeing the flashback stuff, like she's probably like the most powerful one out of all 4 of them. Right. And the fact that she was taken down so easily as well kind of threw me off, I guess. Like when we got into the later episodes, when we seen like how much more powerful she was, it just, I don't know. I guess looking back on it.
The other guy
sold
off himself. So,
yeah.
And then, I mean, the action sequence, all of them were great. you know, teased the Wookiee Jedi. We'd never seen a Wookiee Jedi or Kelnaka. So it did a good job of kind of wanting you to see more. I think looking back, I think we kind of overlooked the lack of explaining things as, oh, we'll find out later in the season. But now I look back and I'm like, they still didn't explain some of the things that were, like Johnny said, introduced in those first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
But, to start a series, they were not bad at all.
It's frustrating because it's like I remember thinking, that first sequence where Master Andara is killed by May, and it's like, she kind of falls to the ground, and you see her face, and she's dead, and it's like, and then it cuts to the introduction of the acolyte or whatever, and it's like, oh snap, like this might be okay, and then as the rest of it unfolds, you're like, okay, clearly there's this other person, that they pick up. The way they play it off is they make it seem like when they pick up Osha that, okay, maybe she could be the assassin and maybe she's just kind of hiding it. And I think the issue they run into is by episode 2, the mystery of the killer and the twins and everything is solved. It's like they know who it is. And so I feel like if you play that off like for half a season or 6 episodes or whatever, I think you present a more interesting concept because it's one of those things where it's like that was the most interesting concept that they played off of early on in the show, and they just abandon it almost immediately. And as soon as they do, it's like the show gets infinitely less interesting, and it's one of those things that it baffles me because when you pitch your entire show to be like this murder mystery thing, and then like you find out who the killer is 3 episodes in, the mystery's gone. It's like, okay, then how does the rest of the show stand on its own 2 feet? And we found out pretty quickly that it couldn't, because there really wasn't much substance past that point. And so, and we'll get into why that is. I mean, I'm just not going to make a blanket statement and say there's just nothing there. But when you get to the end of 2, it's like, oh, we went to this. I believe 2 is the one that ends with May and Osha. Osha's, about to stun May. She's in the speeder, and then she decides not to, and May escapes. And then you see the Sith guy on the island at the very end, and so you find out right then and there that who's who, and the motivations there, and then obviously you get the flashback episode in episode 3. So I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna pitch that as being, which when they initially pitched the show, they said it was a murder mystery thriller type show that's going to delve into more of the Sith side of things during this time period. When you look across the 8 episodes, you go, like you get it for a hot minute and then it's gone, and you really don't delve into much of the Sith either. It's just it's bizarre to me, but
yeah, that's what I mean by like terrible writing decisions for episode 2. Like I don't get why they would reveal really, like they should have like maybe kept like the whole like twin thing, I think, like a secret to like maybe like episode 5 or 6, and then maybe start like hinting at it or like diving more into it to like give it away. But like to just reveal
Not
that
much of a mystery.
No,
well, it's like the whole Batman argument. It's like, how do you know that Bruce Wayne is Batman? And it's like the message, like I'm not saying Bruce Wayne's Batman, but have you ever seen Bruce Wayne and Batman in the same room at the same time? It's like when you do this show, you do separate scenes like they did in the first episode, where it shows May killing a Jedi, and then you don't have to reveal the amount of time that's elapsed between the next scene where now she's now they're with OSHA and she's a prisoner and they're trying to get her to help them to solve it because she's claiming it's not her. And so then the audience gets the mystery of it could be OSHA, but there also could be this other person that is related to her somehow or and so there's ways to do that. It's just that it's like they had no interest in carrying that out longer than the 2 episodes that they did. And then at that point you're asking yourself, okay, so now what's the point of the show? And I think that's what they had to answer from that point on. And we kind of got a very convoluted answer to that question.
Agreed.
Yeah. I know you mentioned episode 3. That's I mean, obviously, this is where it goes down, right? Like, episode 3 is where you lose, I would say, 90% of your audience.
Yeah.
And why is that? I think some people want to say, because I kept hearing from other people who had gotten early access to, I think, the first 4 episodes. They're like, season 3 is going to be the one that destroys the show, or episode 3 is going to be the one that destroys the show. And I watched it, and honestly, a lot of people made a lot of hay about some of the political stuff in it. And honestly, I didn't. There was some of that in the show, but for me,
it
it's
wasn't.
like, if the show is objectively just not good from a technical standpoint, from a writing standpoint, whatever you want to call it, acting, writing, characters, then I'm not even going to make it to that point because I'm going to be worried about all this other stuff. And so it's like, I didn't even have time to think about that because there were so many other things that were jumping out at me. It's like, oh, that's not very good, or oh, that was poorly done, or it's like I never reached that point of thinking, oh, I don't like this political stuff. It's like, no, one, it's just like episode 3 is just kind of boring. I mean, it's slow. It doesn't feel like it's set in a Star Wars universe for a lot of it. It's just it just feels kind of out there, And
I wrote down a few points. So, one of the biggest reviews out there, right? IGN said that episode offers up a lot of tantalizing new layers to how we perceive both the Jedi and the Force. Only thing I want to know is, I even looked up the definition of tantalizing and am confused on how they think any of that was tantalizing. Like, May's motivation this is the start of the confusion of May's motivation. Like, what? Like, I get we see like really what happened in episode 7, but like episode 3, like, you're just gonna set everybody on fire. I mean, the I can't even think his name. I know we said his name. The guy that offs himself, and the Jedi that offs himself in episode 2,
Corbin.
Like
Corbin.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess you could say there was some lasting effects from being taken up, have their mind taken over, or whatever. I don't know, but that is not necessarily something I would say is worth killing yourself over. The witch chant was that was the lamest chant in history.
I honestly can't even remember the chant. I can't lie.
It was awful. So the show had like 180 million. And for the life of me, I can't figure out where it's at. like Johnny was saying, the world seems small. All the sets are claustrophobic. The sense of scale is terrible. And then just kind of like a Marin from the Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor is a better witch than any that were written in this show.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, by far. Like, in the one in the game was just like very powerful and like just like gave off like a very powerful presence. Like these ones were just like.
And she's just better written.
I don't know. Yeah,
it's just it's frustrating in the sense of like when I watched episode 3, I noticed a lot of parallels. To me, they were just stealing essentially Anakin's story arc in terms of, conceived by the Force, wants to become, one of the kids wants to become a Jedi, the other wants to stay with the witches. The only justification they really give, because like one of the frustrations I had is there's no consistency to hardly any of the characters outside of maybe Soul's character.
Yeah, maybe
It's
Soul.
just because even the Sith guy, he sort of flip flops a little at times, and it's like you don't really know why he's doing what he's doing, and it's like May's character was maybe the worst or the prime example of this, where in episode 3, her and her sister obviously have a bond, like we find out later in the show. They're technically the same person, and she feels more connected to the coven of witches than Osha does, and so it's like when Osha has this dream to be a Jedi that she kind of expresses out of nowhere. Like there's no build up to it. There's no other than you see the one scene under the tree where Osha seems to be more kind and considerate than May just wants to like torture the animal or whatever it is, the creature. And so you get maybe some of that, but it's like the problem is that they don't really flesh out that Osha is maybe unhappy where she's at. It's just like, oh, Jedi show up and she's like, oh cool. It's like, but also I grew up on this isolated fortress away from society of any kind. So does she even know what a Jedi is? And so there's just a lot of things that it's so vague that it just makes your head hurt, because you cannot see the motivations of the characters. And then May goes from like, I don't want you to go, you have to stay, to I'll kill you if you try to leave. And it's like, holy crap, that escalated quickly, like.
Yeah, it went like 0 to 100 very quick. Just like lighting the place on fire. Granted, you find out it's an accident later on, but like also like it's just like
0 to 100 real quick.
Also, I feel like they didn't really explain very well too, though. Like the fact that like, yeah, we're trying to make May and Osha into one and whatnot, and that failed, I'm guessing, correct? I think that's kind of like what the premise was, I guess. But like they don't really explain it very well, like what exactly they were trying to do.
It's the same,
like, were they trying to make an army? Like, are you like what are you trying to fulfill here by making them in general? Like, are you just trying to build up your people? Like, they don't go into detail and like explain that, and like that's just like another issue with the entire show, I guess. It's not just this episode, the entire show. They just don't go into detail on that. That kind of annoys me too, because it's like I would like to know what their reason behind all this was for.
Well, and some of it you kind of need to know to understand certain characters. Like you don't have coherent character motivations for any of the witches unless you understand what they're doing. And then when you get to episode 7 and they kind of reveal the quote unquote mystery behind what happened there, which they agonizingly drag out for 4 episodes. It's like every time Soul's about to say something, they interrupt him, and I'm like, I swear I'm gonna find something to throw it across the room if they don't stop doing this.
And I don't think they realize like how easy.
I just have to know that badly, but it's like quit every time he tries it. It's the same stupid stereotype of like something interrupts him, and I'm like, geez, just spit it out. Like
the reveal was like very like easy to tell like what was happening though. Like by episode like 5, 6, I mean I kind of already knew that like they obviously went and kind of murdered either the mother or something happened where like the Jedi killed someone, and that's how most of the events started on that planet for them, basically all the night witches and stuff being dead. Well, not night witches, like I said, it's probably just regular witches. I don't think they're night witches. Are they night witches? Because like they don't explain once again.
They just don't name them. They're just witches. I mean,
it's in like you get to and this is what I get because this is what I try to tell people. You know, we all have different approaches to when we watch movies or TV. I've told people, I said, for me, the first two things I look for is writing and characters, which characters kind of bundle into the writing anyway. But it's like those are the first two things: is the story and the characters. It's like when I go into a show, if you strike out on those two areas, you've lost me. And so in this show, it's like you get to episode 7, you get the reveal, and it's like, okay, these Jedi are here. They're on some sort of exploratory mission, right? Which is pretty common for like there's Jedi sent to explore distant planets, and some of it's scientific reasons.
The timeline also, that's what they're doing in this time. In the High Republic.
Well, and that happens in a lot of the EU stuff too, where it's like they're sent to do different missions, and so we understand that they're looking for a vergence. Now, that's another thing that frustrates me, that they don't explain what exactly a vergence is necessarily. It's like essentially it's like Dagobah. My understanding is it's like Dagobah Dagobah, where there's this source of light side or dark side energy that is like collected in one place, and it's very powerful, and it can be tapped into and maybe used to, like we say, create life and or whatever it is in this show. But that term in and of itself is only really used in the Phantom Menace, when Qui-Gon mentions he senses a vergence in the Force, or I think it was Qui-Gon, pretty sure. But there's not really a great explanation as to what that is, and we understood him to mean that this is basically an anomaly in the Force, something you don't see very often, and it resulted in Anakin coming into being, and we hear that when Shmi says, there wasn't a father, she said, I can't really explain what happened. And that's just kind of what we get. But that being said, when you get to episode 7, you get this shift to, okay, why are they here? Or we're finally understanding what they're doing, how this happens. And you get to where Soul discovers the girls. And this is where his whole, like, I liked his character. I thought he did a good job of portraying what he was given. Mm-hmm. But what's frustrating is that he has this obsession with the twins that's not really explained, like, why he has it. The only comment they give is he says he just has a feeling that Osha's meant to be his apprentice, and I'm like, that's not a good enough reason to like go kind of creepy stalker,
Well, or expound on it, like why?
No. Like, did he lose a child back in the day or something like that? And this like little girl reminds him of, his like little kid that passed away, like
did
something.
He have a sister?
Don't know.
Yeah. They didn't explain that.
And it's the same thing with everybody else. It's like Torben, he's homesick. And I'm like, is that the reason he offs himself later? It's like all of this conflict happened because he was homesick. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, that is kind of like dumb writing too. Like, you're telling me that like
he's homesick.
Yeah, because he was homesick. That's the reason why he stormed the fortress pretty much and almost started this entire massacre pretty much of their race or people. It's
bizarre. It's like, and then like he even they're sitting at the campfire in the one scene, and he's like, talking about how he just wants to go back to Coruscant. And he's like, I don't even know why we're here. And they've been there like 7 weeks, and nobody's told the guy like what they're doing. And I'm like, okay. It's like there would have been some sort of briefing or something at the Jedi Temple before they set off. But yeah, it baffles me to no end. And then you get to where they all show up at the fortress and they're wanting to go in, and they're like, in the 3rd episode they insinuate that the Jedi broke in, and you're like, oh, I wonder what happened. The Jedi broke in. So there's no mystery there. It's like all the questions that they present, it's like, oh, we're going to answer these later. Like, you already know the answer.
Mhm.
And it's like, what happened to destroy the stone facility? That did May really set a fire to a stone fortress? Yeah. May really blew up the fortress with fire. It's made of rock. Yes, it is. She still blew it up.
And I think this goes. I mean, I get kind of to talk about the show as a whole. I guess like they want so bad to portray that what the Jedi did is wrong, and it's some horrific crime. It was awful. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm right there with Master Saul. Like he's trying to protect kids from I don't want
Demon
to
witch lady.
complete dark side, but dark side leaning witch cult. What about that's wrong?
And it's like you get to the sequence where they're all in that courtyard area and they're kind of in a standoff, and I think it's right after Kalnaka was possessed, and then they rescued him, and then you've got the two mothers, and it's like she's standing there, Anastasa's character, she's standing there next to Soul, and maybe it was Torben or Indara, whoever it was, and May runs up, and she's like, I can't even remember what she says, but and then Anastasa's character like starts to vaporize into this black, evil-looking witch smoke demon lady with, black eyys.
What would you do?
And of course, Soul thinks that she's attacking him, and so he's like,
stabbing that thing, bro. What do you mean? I think, dude, like what Soul did was perfectly justifiable. Because if I see some crap like that, dude, I'm asking questions later. Like,
and then she's like,
there's gonna be nobody to ask questions too, because they're all gonna be dead probably. Like,
and then she's like, I was gonna let her go. You're like, were you?
Well, yeah, why didn't you say that before though? Like, why did you start turning into this like smoke monster? Why didn't you tell them that like, hey, you can have Oshot. She wants to come with you. Like, that's fine. We'll let her go. But then you do it after he kills you, after you basically just let this whole entire like massacre happen pretty much.
oh my goodness. Yeah. I thought to myself too, I was like, so much for the power of many. If like one Jedi just like killed all of those witches by forcing them out of Kalnaka's mind. I was like, are we serious here?
I wasn't expecting that at all, actually, when that did happen. I really did not expect like all of them to just die from that personally. I wasn't expecting.
Well, it's like
they just all like laid over.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
I was like, did they fall asleep? Like from like just like the most like the powerful like force or whatever that she used?
Well, it's like they try to present the Jedi, like you said, Drew. They try to present the Jedi as doing something evil and terrible. And it's like, Soul acted in self-defense. He thought he was being attacked.
Very much.
And then Indara did what she did to rescue Kalnaka from being mind-possessed, which the witches started. They did it with Torben once, and then they did it with him. So it's like, again, they've already shown the willingness to act in a sort of evil way like that. Yeah. And so where are the Jedi wrong in this? Because I don't think Indara's intention was to kill them all.
No.
Because you can see when it happens that she kind of has this look on her face like, oh no, what just happened? Like, what did I do? Because I don't think her intention was just to get him out of his mind. And
I guess like they're Jedi, so to me, like they're doing what they think is right, by the Force, and I guess that's what makes Soul's connection make sense, a little bit more sense maybe, because he's basically he feels this connection, and it's through the Force. Nobody explains it, but to the girls, and I guess they shouldn't have just went up there, I guess, but like they were sent to explore the planet, like that's part of the planet is the people on it.
And when we get into some more of the other motivation, I mean, you look at the confrontation, and this is the moment that I shook my head the most in terms of like what I talked about characters just kind of being very inconsistent. And it's in episode 4 where they've all gone back to Brendok, and they're they're. I think it's May's there to find Kelnaka, and then the Jedi are rushing there to try to stop her. And she's almost there. She's with Kamir's character, which we understand is Smilo Ren, and it's like you get to the point where right before she's about to get to Kelnaka, she's like, you know what? I think I don't want to kill Jedi anymore. I just want to go turn myself in. And you're like, what the crap? And there's
it's like
there's there's no justification for it. It's just like she makes one comment about like I think it's just something about she trusts her sister more than she trusts her, and it's like, but she's angry with her sister because her sister betrayed her essentially when they were younger. So it's like there's no coherency to that decision. Now you could say maybe she was fed up with having to keep doing what this Sith Lord was asking her to do, but it's at the same time, it's like you wanted these people dead for ruining your life. So like where, it's baffling to me. And then you get to the episode 5 where they reveal who the Sith guy is, and it's like his whole motivation is he just wants to be able to live his life and do what he wants. And I'm like, yeah, it's like going around snapping people's necks and stabbing Jedi, and it's like, yeah, I just want to be able to live free of Jedi. And I'm like, well, if you probably wouldn't go around killing them, they'd probably leave you alone, It's like, what did you expect to happen, man? You're going to go around acting evil, you're going to get hunted down. I mean, come on.
Back to the whole, like, her just, like, abandoning her mission to kill everyone and go to her sister. That kind of reminded me of the whole, like, scene from Toy Story where Andy's like, I don't want to play with you anymore, and he just drops Woody, pretty much. Like, I don't know. Every time I think of that, it just reminds me of that scene. But
I don't know. It's.
I will say though. So episode 4, I think it's episode 4. They end it with Smilo Ren. What they, apparently people are calling him.
That's the first time he shows up.
Yeah,
in front of the Jedi. Yeah.
That to end it that way was honestly pretty good though. Like I liked how they ended it, where you just see him basically force push everyone back. Like you just like see this like immense power, and it's like that's how they end it, and you're like, okay, well now I'm kind of excited to watch the next episode to an extent.
I'm
go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm good. 4 was a lot better than 3, obviously.
Yeah,
but it just adds the beginning of it just kind of adds to the confusion, like Johnny was saying. They ended it well. I mean, they ended it well. Like, the whole May's chasing after Kelnaka to try and get to him, and then by the time she gets to him, he's already been killed by the stranger or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, I can't remember. Did they actually say his real name though in the show, or did they just call him the stranger the entire time?
His name is they call him Kamir, but they don't. Kamir. I don't know if that's his actual name or.
Okay.
He's Smilo Ren. Come on, guys.
Fair enough.
We got to get with the trend.
Yeah, I mean, like the way they ended episode 4 and the way they started episode 5, I think they did a good job because, like, episode 5.
Well, and episode 5 is the most watchable because it's basically just a giant fight for 30 minutes.
Yeah, and I think that was, probably the best episode to me, at least personally, for the action, and that's really it. But I don't know, they started off hot episode 5 with the action. Action was really good. Soul was kicking ass, and then. Yeah, I mean, it's just all around action-wise, it was a good episode. But other than that, it didn't really advance the plot a whole lot, I don't think, if I remember right. So, like, there wasn't really much plot to advance, I guess, to begin with. That doesn't help, but
Well, and I think as soon as the fighting stops and, like, May and Osha start talking to each other again, I told Drew, I was instantly reminded of how poorly written this thing is because the dialogue's it's just bad. And I was like, just go back to fighting each other again. I don't want to listen to people talking this for too long because it starts to make less and less sense when the dialogue starts up.
No.
It's like, because and that's what happens when you don't write consistent characters. When you don't write characters that have a consistent arc. Because, I mean, something, just for an example, something that I've always commented on about The Last Jedi is one of the things that frustrated me about the story in that one was, put aside the many other things I had issues with in that movie, But essentially the idea of a story arc is a character starts somewhere, and then at the end of their arc, they kind of end up somewhere else. But where you get in The Force Awakens is with Kylo Ren's character and Rey's character, is they go from Kylo Ren goes from this kind of conflicted, he's not quite 100% committed to the dark side. He's kind of back and forth, to at the end of the movie, he's like more resolute in his, he kills his father. He sort of makes that final commitment, and then he's sort of all in. And then Rey is going kind of from a, backwater girl to a hero of sorts of the Resistance. And it's like, so when you get to The Last Jedi, you want to see those arcs progress. But when you start the show, it's like, okay, Rey's all on the good side, Kylo's all dark side. Like, they have these conversations throughout the show, and then you get to the end, you get to the climax. He kills Snoke. Rey finds out, she's not, she doesn't have any special lineage, which that's retcon later, obviously. But then they're standing there opposed to each other, and it's like, Rey wants him to come with him to Resistance to be good, and then Kylo's like, you need to come with me. We can rule together, whatever. And at the end of the movie, they're both right back where they started, and so very much in the vein of this show, where the characters are not necessarily right back where they started, but there's no coherent arc to where there's no clear start point and end point, and there's really no great justification as to why, like Osha ends up the Sith, and why May kind of stays the same the entire show, kind of, but not really, but mostly yes, kind of. And
Then she gets her mind blocked.
And that was odd too. It's like you get to the finale, it's like, why doesn't he just not take both of the girls with him? And now we understand the rule of two, to where it has to be one master and one apprentice, but they don't explain any of that. So it's like, it's left up to people to just sort of make that up on their own, or ask someone who does know. But at the end of at the end of watching this show, I'm like, can I just be like May, just wipe my mind that I ever watched this thing, and we'll just move on and just be done? Because like my head just hurt after watching most episodes. I was like, what is going on here?
Also, that whole like only having like one Padawan thing is kind of bullcrap, I feel like, because like he wanted to have his own way of doing things. So like if that's the case, then I feel like you just like,
i.e. no consistency. That's the problem, is you don't know why. Like, tell me going into the finale tell me plainly what each character's motivation is. Like, good luck. You might could say Kumir wants a Padawan, okay, or he wants an apprentice or a pupil, whatever he calls it, an acolyte. May, what the heck does she want? What does Osha want? What does Soul want?
Yeah, it's not,
Well,
yeah, they don't really.
Soul's just trying to get Osha back.
Yeah, probably, I guess it, but
I guess
It's supposed to, you're supposed to build the tension by all of these different characters' motivations, and the decisions they make all lead to this climax. But when you get to the finale, you're like, you don't even know why all these characters are doing what they're doing, and that's the problem. It's just like they're just all there, and then it's like, and then there's the Soul's fighting Smiler Ren, and then like and then May shows up, and Osha and May are fighting, and you don't know why they're fighting, but you kind of know why they're fighting. And then you get to, and then Osha's, wants to kill Soul because he killed her mom, but Soul doesn't want to bother to tell her why. And it's like,
I was about to say, she doesn't even give him a chance to, and he doesn't say it why he did it. I don't know. Maybe your mom turned into a giant smoke monster right next to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like, what?
It's-
Like, let's go back to that though, real quick. 'Cause, like, what was she even trying to do to begin with? Like, it looked like she was like going towards May, but like, what was that gonna like? What was she gonna do to her though? Like, I don't like what was like the smoke
Maybe she was just.
ability
I
supposed to do? Like,
assumed she was trying to get May away.
I guess I don't know. Like, what is she gonna like pick her up with the smoke? Like, I don't know. It
Well,
just doesn't
because you could,
like.
because May was kind of fading too.
Oh yeah, she was. I guess. Yeah. So
I just
I don't
assumed that's
know.
what she was doing. Now.
it's one of those you get to in the ultimate judgment of this show was plain to me. I think about 3 or 4 episodes in when I watch a few other YouTubers that do Star Wars content. Some of them will do polls. A guy that I've mentioned before, Thor Skywalker, he's got a really good channel, but he does a poll at the end of all of his episodes, and maybe hopefully this is something we can do as our audience grows, we can and do more of this sort of thing. But one of the things he does after every episode, he puts a poll out like, what did you think of the show? And he gives you 5 different options that you can choose from. The top being, I thought it was great, and then at the bottom it was like, haven't watched it or don't plan on watching it. After like 3 or 4 episodes, the percentage of people who haven't watched it or don't plan on watching it, 60 to 65% of his audience who basically watches everything for the most part. And then I asked 2 or 3 different people about coming on and doing this review with us. And I had 2 or 3 people tell me, I have no interest in watching this show. I'm not watching it. And this was before the show even really got started. And so I think the most damning judgment of this show has been people just they don't care. They're not watching it. And I think that's always worse than someone watching it and then tearing it apart. Is like people don't care enough to even give it a try. Like that's even worse.
Yeah.
And so I think that tells you all you need to know. And the fact that after this week, I doubt you'll hear anybody talking about this anymore. Like I don't think like the shows that people really love, people are talking about for months and months and months after. They're talking about a season 2. They're excited about what's next. Like you're not going to hear that with this. I mean, within a month, people are going to have forgotten about this. It's
what
going to
people
be
are excited for is for them to cancel the show, like, and that's like not good at all. So. And honestly,
I think the other question is too is it's like if this show was not Star Wars, would you have lasted more than the first 2 episodes? Because I personally would have stopped watching after those first 2 initial episodes.
To be honest, I wanted to stop watching it to begin with, but like I knew we were doing the podcast, I was like forcing myself to watch it pretty much. But like if we weren't doing like an episode of the podcast here, like I would literally have not finished the show probably.
I didn't want to finish it. It was very much like with Rings of Power. I got like 3 episodes in, and I was like, I'm not watching any more of this. And then one of my friends convinced me to finish it, and I got to the end, and I was like, I really wish I'd quit after 3. It's like you suffer through.
Literally.
Oh,
like I could have been doing so many other things with my time, like watching an actual good show. Like it just.
Yeah, I almost had to go watch. Like I had to do a John Wick like binge because I was like, I need to watch something that's actually entertaining and fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those where I am relieved it's over. Obviously we want Star Wars to be good, and I think everybody needs to understand that about us. It's like we're not some of those channels that are just getting on to bash. And to be honest, that's perfectly justified with this show for people to get on and bash it because it's not any good. And now there are people that may find enjoyment from it, and I'm not saying you can't. I mean, if you can enjoy this, God bless you. I mean, seriously, because it's one of those things where. I mean, I could not find the only like y'all talking about the only enjoyment I found out of it was the action sequences, and that was really some of the only bright spot, maybe the only bright spot in the entire show. And so, I would say that I thought Smilo Ren's, the actor that played him, did the best he could with what he had. I thought Soul's the actor that played Soul did the best he could with what he had. Everybody else was just. I'd rather not talk about it.
Yeah, what was up with that little rodent thing? What was that thing called? I can't even remember. Like, why did it just like not help?
kept
Why did it rip
calling
out?
it
Why did it rip out the wires? Like, I was so confused. Then you're gonna go help the Jedi find. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Freaking Basil, man, the most pointless character.
That thing was like, I was mad. I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And then you're just gonna go help him again? Like, what? This doesn't
Here
make
is
sense.
my final, like, I don't want to call it final, but my thought. This show made Jar Jar Binks look like a museum masterpiece.
I mean,
you heard.
All right,
you
well,
heard
hot
me.
take. I think Jar Jar Binks wasn't that bad personally, but like
I don't need.
I
think
would
like
personally,
he gets so much hate to the point where like it's kind of repetitive now. Like looking back on it, like
That's what I'm saying.
It's
This
not
show
as
made him
bad.
look like a museum masterpiece.
No, it did. But like
it's one of those things where it's like y'all know how much I disliked Obi-Wan Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett. I would rather watch those shows than this. Because at least
I don't know.
There's some
the Book of
redeeming
Boba
qualities.
Fett show with the mods, or the episode with the mods.
But you had the 2 Mando episodes, so it had some, And with Kenobi, at least like you had Ewan McGregor, and you had some decent moments with him and Anakin, and it. But it's just this.
Are we actually going to talk about
I am frustrated at the state of Lucasfilms, the people who greenlight this stuff, because they sat down and watched this before anyone else and said, "This is great. Let's put this out." And they gave them $200 million to make this show. I mean, can we get more Tony Gilroys in to make Star Wars content? People who know what they're doing, that have a right to be there and can handle the lore, the world, with the right kind of intelligence and grace and respect that it deserves. Because you don't have to like Andor or Rogue One or whatever, the style of it, but you cannot deny how well made it is. Like like we talked about this before, I haven't heard anybody say that it's bad. They just say it just doesn't feel like Star Wars, or it's just too slow for me. And it's like, well, that's not really a critique of the quality of the filmmaking or the showmaking, whatever you want to call it. It's just they don't prefer that style, and that's fine. But like, you can look at something like the Kenobi show or the Book of Boba Fett show or the Acolyte and say that's just objectively bad writing. Like, from an objective perspective, it's just bad. And it's crazy that you can get that sort of contrast between Andor and the Acolyte, and it's like that steep of a decline between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And even the steep decline from like the first 2 seasons of Mando down to the Acolyte is like dropping off a cliff, And I just think until some sort of leadership change happens there, where it's going to continue to be a incoherent mess.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty much sums it up. It is a budget though too. Like 180 million, like, is a lot of money. And like,
where did all that money go?
And it just makes you like put in perspective, like
somebody
pocketed
a bunch of money.
Oh,
throw some of that at some quality writers, man. Phew.
Well, and like put in perspective, like the movie Whiplash won so many awards, and the budget was only 3.3 million. And
hey, the Godzilla -1 that was the Godzilla -1 that was so well regarded last year, 18 million.
Literally, like,
yeah,
you don't need a big budget to make a good movie, a good quality movie or show. Like, there's movies out there and shows that have done it with less of a budget, 10 times less than of a budget, and it's a phenomenal show. Like like where is all that money going? Like it's clearly not going to the writers. It's going to some of the actors, I guess, because like some of the actors in these shows are like the only good thing about it, but they're
Probably gave it all to Carrie Ann Moss for like the 5 seconds she's in the show.
probably.
What a waste, man.
Are we gonna talk about the Kyber crystal getting bled too? Like I know that, like I don't know the lore behind it, obviously, like as much as y'all probably, but like I know like a lot of people were really upset with that and like how they did it, and it kind of like apparently wasn't like we didn't follow, I guess, the lore behind it all.
That was one of the things of lore that
was taken from Legends. Okay, so they're doing Legends. All right. Well, then I guess
I know they talk about I'm not super familiar with
like,
it. But I know there's something to do with
obviously
the allegiance of the person wielding the saber determines to some degree what.
Obviously, I know they introduced the whole bleeding the crystals thing in what, like 2017, I think it was, in the comic or a book, was it, or a comic? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was the Darth Vader comic. I thought that they introduced it in.
They talked about him doing it.
Yeah, and so like, granted, I know that they just introduced that in 2017, so it's kind of hard for like them to like. Obviously, the prequels came out way before that, so like seeing Anakin with the blue lightsaber and stuff, you know, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but like it makes sense that like they couldn't do that because they didn't, you know, bring this concept into like existence until 2017 after those were made. But I don't know, like the fact that like Anakin did all these things, horrible things leading up to him, and it didn't change once over his emotions and his hatred. Like, I'm sorry, but you can't tell me like it wouldn't change over his hatred. Like he had a lot of hatred towards Obi-Wan. He had a lot of hatred towards the Jedi, you know, like there's a lot of grief there as well. Like there was so many negative emotions that he was showing and feeling. And you're telling me that it wouldn't have changed?
Well, it's probably because it's not a George Lucas concept, and also I think what George Lucas is playing on in Revenge of the Sith with the two blue lightsabers is he's basically trying to. It's almost like symbolic in a sense of he's fighting what's left, I guess, of Anakin almost. It's like it's not really Anakin anymore. It's just the last vestiges of who he used to be, and so that blue lightsaber is kind of the last remnant of who he was, and then it's a kind of symbolic is what I kind of look at it as being, and it's kind of cool because you always see red versus blue or green or purple or whatever, and just to be able to see two light colored lightsabers in a duel together, it just makes it
for sure. I think that's
visually interesting.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, yeah, that's fair and for sure. But like, I don't know. I also think that, like, then if that's the case, they shouldn't introduce this whole like bleeding crystals thing, and that's how you do it, though. I don't know. I just think like bringing that into it though makes it like very hard to. It makes it messy for like older things, you know, like the prequels and stuff. Personally,
well, and if you go into like say the episode, I'm trying to think of it's season 3 or 4 of the Clone Wars, where it might even be 5, where the Padawans go to Ilum to get their lightsaber crystals, and when they stick them in the lightsaber, they just are whatever color the crystal is when you turn it on. It's like they don't really talk about you know how that's determined, how they have a green or a blue, or in Mace Windu's situation a purple, and it's like they don't explain that. It's just it's one of those things I think George Lucas probably didn't care all that much about. He just wanted the symbolic nature of an evil guy, you know, a dark side user carries a red lightsaber, and the Jedi carry these lighter colored, these light centric, you know, these, you know, because red could be associated with more evil things, and then you know, your blues and your greens and your lighter colors could be more with the light side. So
yeah, I mean, I wish like I think like the, what is it, Torben's lightsaber color is really cool. The whole orange, I think it's like an orangish, like yellowish kind of color in a way. I thought that was really good though. I thought that was cool. But like, speaking of lightsabers though, the one chick with the bald head, all green bald head.
Do we have to talk about
the whip lightsaber? Like, what? That was the dumbest thing to me too though. Like, why are you going to introduce something like that when like obviously like that's not a thing in any of the newer ones, and like that should be a thing in one of the newer, you know, like the ones that take place like 100 years later, because they have better technology. They have better things to like make better things. Like,
Drew, tell everyone watching right now. Did I not call Vernestra the connection for her and Kamir? Like as
You
soon
did.
as
Soon as
the Kamir's character revealed the scar on his back, I was like, Vernestra's his master. I called it. Like I
oh
texted him
yeah,
right after
that
the
makes
episode and
sense.
told him. I was
Yeah.
like, it's got to be. And then at the end of episode 8, it's like, there it is.
Yeah, that's very fair. Actually, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that would make sense for sure. But also, like, I hate that they like left that on a cliffhanger, and like the fact that there may not even be a season 2 now is like kind of like, again annoying because it's like I would like
There
there to
won't
be
be
a
a
season 2
season
so
2.
they could
Let's be honest.
so they could explain everything, but like the show just wasn't good. So like if they make a season 2, I don't even know if I'd want to watch it.
Yeah. I almost would watch it just to get the explanations, but then knowing this show, they wouldn't give it. They wouldn't even give them
wouldn't.
it.
They'd probably draw it
It's
off.
like trying to convince me to watch the Rings of Power season 2. It's like I don't want to. Like you
You're
can't
going to.
make me. You'd have to like tie me down and force me to watch it.
You're going to.
Which we're gonna watch the Rings of Power season 2 because we got to talk about it, but we don't want to. So
I will be down to talk about the Hunt for Gollum though. I'm for sure gonna be going to see that, and probably the animated one too. I'm excited for that too. So
that does do look like they would be good.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Are we gonna talk about Addie Mundy as well? Like, the dude wasn't even born yet. Like, that's what makes me angry. And the fact that they changed it on Wiki after the episode came out because they realized they screwed up.
Like, so that was
like I think that tells you all you need to know.
Like, come on, bro. Like, how do you make bring a character into a show 100 years before? Well, I think it was 100 years, right? Before the prequels, or was it more?
100 years before the Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace, okay. But how are you going to introduce a character that wasn't even born yet, though, and then you're going to just change it on Wiki to basically make like up for your mistake? So and hope that like nobody notices. Like,
I don't remember if the content that had his birth year was Legends or not.
I think it was on Wikipedia, like it was on their official.
Yeah, it was on actual like official Wikipedia. It said that he was born basically after the events of Acolyte, pretty much like when they did. It was like I can't remember what the year was that he was born, but it takes place like he was born after Acolyte happened, and then they changed it. Apparently, like I saw a thing on Twitter. It was 2 screenshots. It was one where his actual birth was, and then it was like basically what they changed it to, and it was 2 different screenshots, and it was from the actual wiki page too. So like, unless they like. I mean, it could be, fake screenshots. Maybe they like altered it. Who knows? But like, I don't know. I mean,
no, I think that was pretty well confirmed that they changed it. I think because there's a lot of lore, hardcore lore folks out there that like probably know these birth dates by heart. And but I think that's something that would have been established in some of the Star Wars encyclopedias that like George Lucas had made, and like. When it shows the characters, you would have been able to tell them like when they were born. Like these are probably been established for years and years and years.
Well, and like no wonder he doesn't know a Sith is around. The dude wasn't even technically supposed to be born yet. I mean, he probably wouldn't know then.
Well, so what's bad
they
is
did go
like,
back and fix that. Vernestra covering it all up.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that Ki-Adi-Mundi was even in the episode. Like I knew it was the same species of alien, but I didn't even know it was him because it didn't look anything like him. I was like,
I didn't know it either until I saw the credits, and I was like, no, there's no way that's him. What? And again, like you said, like they did, like I guess a good job with like fixing that mistake in a way by like having her cover up the entire thing. So like technically, yes,
but he still knows.
But would he though? I guess I don't know. I mean, like I don't know.
He didn't go with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like as a Jedi, like as like Jedis though, you think they would be able to like figure out like that it's not true and like like figure out like the actual truth behind it. Like they're Jedi, for crying out loud.
Well, so the guy that comes in, like you're telling, and this is not. I think that might have been Star Wars Theory or someone that made the point of like, he said, you're telling me that these people found out that 4 or 5 Jedi were killed, and you're telling me that news didn't get its way around the entire Jedi Temple, and like everybody didn't know that happened, kind of thing. Like there's no way that it would have been contained. And they try to make the arguments like, oh, this was a time where the Jedi had very little oversight. It's like, well, no, you had like they basically just like lied a bunch, Like it's not that they didn't have any oversight, it's just that they weren't telling anybody, or it's one of those things where it's like they try to paint the Jedi in a negative light, and they have all these dark secrets, and it's like
It's so 2017.
yeah, it's it's strange, and it's incoherent, and it's just a mess.
Lots of plot holes, lots of just terrible writing. Not great acting either, besides maybe 2 characters.
Yeah.
And one character had to literally learn English before he could even get the role so he could play it. Like,
he probably should have just not learned English.
No, like I feel bad for him. He had to learn English to play this role, and like it. He said he was basing. I mean, like he said he was apparently basing his like role kind of like his performance after Qui-Gon. Apparently, because apparently he really liked Qui-Gon and the original or all the prequels. I mean, so I mean that's
not really anything like Qui-Gon, but I mean
No.
I appreciate his,
him trying to. I think it's kind of hard for him to like base it off Qui-Gon because of how they wrote the character. But I mean, at least he was trying to put in the effort, I think, and I think I appreciate that at least.
I mean, Qui-Gon essentially. So this is a deeper discussion. I'm not going to get into it in depth, but Qui-Gon essentially was the what the Jedi were supposed to be in the prequel era. People who, the Jedi that were submitted to the will of the Force over the politics and the council and these different things. It's like he was the one that sort of saw it clearly. So that's why when you get into, you look at some of the messaging behind the Duel of the Fates and his duel with Darth Maul, and how, it ended up being Obi-Wan that trained him instead of Qui-Gon. And, if that's why it was such a crucial point in Anakin's life that Qui-Gon didn't survive, because I think there's a good argument to be made that Anakin probably wouldn't have turned out the way he did. But and that's not necessarily the fault of Obi-Wan, because he was only doing, what he was taught by the council, and maybe he was always kind of opposed to Qui-Gon's way of doing things in the Phantom Menace, and so but I think Qui-Gon was one of those where when he noticed something different about Anakin, and then through some investigation, the midichlorians, the pod race, the different things, he kind of confirmed that there's something special here that is way beyond anything we've encountered before. And so that's, with Soul's character, it's like, these girls might be in danger. This one I feel is supposed to be my Padawan. There's like no explanation. There's no deeper discovery there. It's just like, this is what it is for reasons, and yeah, I don't know. I'm just glad it's over.
Agreed.
I'd like to watch something good now to wash all that away. Maybe Cobra Kai season 6.
I'm gonna watch the Bear season 3, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's about all we have to talk about, and all that we want to talk about, because I think we're about over this one. But for those who have stuck around to listen, thank you all for tuning in. It's been a while since we posted. We're going to try to get a little bit more consistent. But yeah, subscribe, comment, give us a like, and just stay tuned, because we got a bit of a fun video coming up soon. We're going to rank in tier list style our every live action animated Star Wars thing since the original Star Wars in 1977. Maybe minus like the holiday special or something. I don't think we have that in there, um, but yeah, just stay tuned for that. That's something cool we've got coming up. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot of fun and kind of give y'all a good idea of where we stand on all the Star Wars projects that have come out so far. So, thank y'all for hanging with us, and we'll see y'all next time.